Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Crossroads Church. We're so glad to see you here this morning. Why don't you take a second, say hi to the folks around you, introduce yourself, say go Broncos, and then continue to sing. We're going to keep singing.
To you our hearts are open. Would you pray with me? Lord, I pray that our hearts would be open to you today. Thank you for being here with us. And God, I pray that by all of us being here together, we would be drawn closer to you. There's nothing worth more that will ever come close. Nothing can compare. You're our living hope. Your presence, I've tasted and seen of the sweetest of loves, where my heart becomes free and my shame is undone. In your presence, Lord, Holy Spirit, you are welcome.
Man, this ball has way too much air in it. Anyway, my name is Rod, and I want to welcome you to Crossroads Church this weekend. And if this is your first time here, you picked a great weekend to be here, and we're thrilled that you're joining us. And it is our hope that you have a great experience and that you come back again and we can get to know one another. Kind of a good way to get to know us a little bit is by taking a look at that program you received. In fact, why don't we all pull that out right now? There's a couple things in there that I'd like to highlight that I think might be of interest to you. You know, every weekend when I come here to church, I kind of browse through or walk through the various different kids and student spaces, and two things stand out to me. Number one is seeing kids and students engaging in great experiences where they're learning more about God at an age-appropriate level with their peers. The second thing that stands out to me is the incredible volunteer teams that we have here that are passionately serving our kids and students. And that's why I'd like to talk about something that's taking place right here in this atrium this Tuesday night from 6 to 8 p.m. It's called Find Your Fit. And if you're somebody that maybe in this beginning of the new year, you've been thinking to yourself, I've been wondering what it might be like to serve in our kids and student space. If you have a remote interest, we want to encourage you to join us. We're going to have childcare if you have children that need it. We're providing a meal. But what we're going to do is introduce you to all the different areas that you can serve in, so you can really find your fit to serve in our kids and students. There's things that take place here on the weekend. We have midweek experiences, also prep time that needs to take place throughout the week. So come and join us this Tuesday night, 6 to 8 p.m. right here in the atrium. The second thing I'd like to talk to you about is in the area of challenge. You know, throughout the month of January, many of us set some New Year's resolutions, and we think about different ways we can get our lives better. And we would encourage you to take a spiritual growth step. And we think the best way to do that is by taking our Next Step classes. And in your program, you're going to find a card that kind of breaks down what the classes look like. But let me give a quick overview. First of all, there's class 101, which is taught by our senior pastor, John Smith. And that class basically talks about what it means to be a member of a church, specifically here at Crossroads. Then we have 201, which talks about the habits that are necessary to thrive as a Christ follower. 301 talks about how to find out what your spiritual gifts, passions, your heart, your experience, even your personality, and how God used all of that to find the perfect area of serving. And then 401 talks about our life mission in the world. So these classes go in sequential order. So if you take 101, 201, 201, 301, 301, 401. And if you'd like to register for the appropriate class in your stage, you can simply go to Crossroads, Colorado. You can look at the website right here and register. Well, and as for today, we're currently in a series called I Quit. And one of our pastors, Dennis Anderson, is going to present a great message. And he's going to be talking about the whole idea of quitting, complaining, quit blaming. And I know I'm speaking to a great group of people here. So after the football game that you're going to watch this weekend, you're not going to be complaining about how the game was officiated, or you're not going to be complaining about how much air was in the ball. But we're just going to have a great time. So thanks for joining us here this weekend, and we hope to see you next weekend.
Somehow Rod always seems to be wearing the wrong jersey. Hey, well, we're going to continue on in our service. This is a portion of our service where we continue to worship, but we worship with our offerings and our gifts to God. And I'm really grateful to be a part of a church that is so generous. I think a lot of people want to see their money go to good use. They want to see their money do things for people and good things for people. And there's no better place than Crossroads. If you think about it and you look at what happens here on a weekly basis or in the weekend, there is so much change and life change that happens because of your generosity and the way that God uses our gifts to do powerful things here in Northern Colorado. So I want to pray for that, and then we're going to take our offering and continue to worship. Father God, we want to thank you so much for just, God, the gift of this place that we can come and experience you and worship you. Lord, as we offer these gifts, God, that you first gave us, Lord, I pray that you would take them, that you would do powerful things with it in Northern Colorado, to see life change, to see more people come to you, to experience you. And God, we just pray that you would utilize these gifts and offerings to the best of their ability, and God, that we could be good stewards of that. So Lord, we offer these gifts up to you. We pray that you continue to be present as we worship you, God. Lord, we love you, and we give you all the praise. Amen.
I've heard 1,000 stories of what they think you're like, but I've heard the tender whisper of love. The dead of night, you tell me
that you're pleased and that I'm never alone. You're good, good Father. To you I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. Well, I see many searching for answers far and wide, but I know you're all searching for answers. Only you provide, 'cause you know just what you need before we say a word. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. And you're perfect in all of your ways. Yes, you're perfect in all of your ways. Oh, you're perfect in all of your ways to us. Lord, you're perfect in all of your ways. Yes, you're perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. Oh, love so undeniable, I can hardly speak. Peace so unexplainable, I can hardly think as you call. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still into love. Love, love. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. And you're perfect in all of your ways. Yes, you're perfect in all of your ways. Oh, you're perfect in all of your ways to us. Yes, you're perfect in all of your ways. Oh, you're perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. You're good, good Father. It's who you are. Who you are. Who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. Yeah. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're good, good Father. Oh, it's who you are. Yeah. Well, I'd like to say welcome to Crossroads today. I noticed there's a few Bronco fans out there today. And people have asked me when I come in, Dennis, why are you wearing an Oakland Raiders jersey? And we like to pride ourselves in being an accepting church, but today, not so much. So I thought I should write a little song to explain about this. Rod and I, we had this bet. I lost, so this is what I get. I have to wear this when I speak, no matter how embarrassing. But the Broncos have a shot at this, while the Raiders eat their chips and dips. This makes me feel like such a sinner. What do I do to be a winner? Then I remembered the Bible says, sing this with me, take off the old, put on the new. So that's just what I've got to do. Okay, enough football silliness for one day. Well, today I want to talk about blaming. We live in a culture of blame. Our court systems, our government, our schools, our psychology fields, medical fields are just rampant with this idea that we need to blame someone. And that all it's producing is more and more people who are more and more miserable, who are locked into blaming. I mean, we've heard about frivolous lawsuits, right? I mean, the most famous one, Sheila Liebeck sued McDonald's, remember, for spilling hot coffee in her lap. Well, maybe you heard of Richard Overton, sued Anheuser-Busch for $10,000 for false advertising because when he drank a six-pack of light beer, it did not produce hot babes on a balmy beach. The case was dropped. Justin Aiken sued NBC for $2.5 million after a particularly grotesque episode of The Fear Factor on TV. Apparently, when he watched a person drink a smoothie made of blended rats, it caused him to run into a wall and throw up. But it's NBC's fault. When I read about those incidents, when you hear about them, what's your response? I can't believe how quick people are to blame each other. Then I remembered a conversation I had with my wife just last week. We were sitting there in the evening and she casually said, hey dear, I've noticed that you've been spending quite a bit of time when we're together on that phone, iPad, and laptop. Every man and woman knows this is code language. For what? 3 options. Option A, I want you to vote on these. I miss you, dear, and I want some of your undivided attention. How many think it's that? Yeah, how many think it's this next one? You seem really distracted and I'm concerned about you. Not so much. Okay, number 3. If you don't put that stupid thing down, I'm gonna flush it down the toilet. I opted for none of those. Instead, I said, well, I've noticed that you too have been spending a lot of time on your laptop. We know what happens next. We have this warm, animated conversation that leads to closeness and intimacy. Barbara and I weren't the first couple to experience the blame game. In fact, it's a very old, well-developed practice. The first instance of blaming in the Bible, Page 3, it starts way early with Adam and Eve. When they get caught with their hand in the fruit bowl, God comes to them and says this. It's printed in your program, it's on the screen. But the Lord God called to the man, where are you? He answered, I heard you in the garden. I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid. And God said, who told you you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree that I commanded you not to eat from? The man said, the woman you put here with me, she gave me some fruit from the tree and I ate it. Then the Lord God said to the woman, what is this that you have done? The woman said, the serpent deceived me and I ate.
Well, here's what happens. This is how this goes. When we often have a desired outcome that doesn't happen, oftentimes we revert to the blame side of the conversation. And one of the things we blame right off the bat is circumstances. God comes to Adam, and Adam says, hey, it's my circumstances because I was hiding. I was naked. You didn't want me to walk around all predisposed. And besides, God, when I went to my closet, there was nothing to wear. Women, you can use this. I had nothing to wear. I had to buy something new. Now you know where the phrase, he got caught with his pants down, comes from. But oftentimes, when the heat's on us, we shift it to our circumstances. I had so many interruptions and so much other work to do, I just couldn't get it done. Blame. The reason I'm late again is because the traffic was so bad. When the truth is, the traffic is always bad. And I just didn't leave in time. But I want to blame the traffic. We blame other people. God says to Adam, have you eaten from the tree? And Adam says, it's that woman. You know what? She gave me the fruit. I didn't technically pick it. And I'm just trying to be a good husband, listen to my wife, do what she says for a change. But Eve, that woman, now she's a piece of work. You should look at it. We blame other people. Students blame teachers. I didn't get my homework done, teacher, because I didn't want to add to your workload. Parents blame teachers, teachers blame parents, adult children blame their parents. The reason I'm so messed up is because my parents messed me up. It's their fault. Communities blame water boards. Water boards blame mayors. Mayors blame governors. Governors blame the Senate. Senate blames the president. On and on. We blame people. We blame evil. God comes to Eve. What does Eve say? It's that serpent. It's that evil power in the world. He deceived me. This is the classic, the devil made me do it, right? Or in more modern terms, what happens in Las Vegas? Not my fault. Sin City's fault. There is an evil force in the world. Sometimes bad things happen because of it. But if we're really honest, sometimes I think most of us have said things like this. That third ice cream sundae looks so delicious, I had to eat it. That evil ice cream, that's the problem. That salesperson was so slick. Man, now we're driving a car we can't afford. That's that evil car business. She just threw herself at me. I had no choice. We blame evil. And sometimes we blame even God. God comes to Adam and says, look, you ate. And what does he say? Look real closely at 3 verse 12. The woman who you put here. You're the one. It's your fault, God. I was completely happy as a single man. Just minding my own business in the garden. And then along comes this woman. I couldn't resist. We got married, but I never loved her. I never loved her in the first place. If you, God, hadn't put this woman in my life, I wouldn't have made that mistake. We blame even God. God, if you'd made me more beautiful and given me a better body, I'd like myself more. God, if you would have let me grow up in a less abusive family. God, if you had given me a better job, a better income, a better kids, a better church, better education, better spouse. I've observed even this. God gets blamed for people's unbelief. God, if you would just do more supernatural activity, I'd believe in you. Or God, if you'd run the world a lot more differently, like this world is messed up, I could never believe in a God who runs the world the way you do. If you'd manage this world better, I would believe in you. God, in other words, God, if you'd just be the kind of God I want you to be, I'd believe in you. I love Tim Keller's statement about this. He said, if we have a God small enough to understand, we would not have a God big enough to worship. Do you ever blame circumstances? Do you do it? Do you ever blame other people? Blame evil? Blame God? Do you? Yeah, me too. Henry Cloud says, blame is comfort food for the soul. Why? Why is this oftentimes such a natural response? You know, I thought about a lot of reasons. In fact, I designed this mental place called the Hall of Blame. Do you have one? I think everybody does. Let me tell you a few things that are in my Hall of Blame sometimes, and you just put a mental checklist by any of these if you go, you know what, that's in mine too. A pain. Man, if I have to face the consequences of this, it's gonna hurt too much if the truth comes out. Insecurity. I don't want to admit that what I did didn't work, that I actually have flaws. My reputation is in there. I know I have flaws, but I don't want you to see them. You'll think less of me. Loss. If I face the consequences, I could lose my job. I could lose a relationship. I could lose a lot of money. Confidence. Failure means I'm a failure. I see failure always as a bad thing. There's some laziness in there. I don't have to do anything about it. Somebody else can do it. Ever said this? Somebody should do something about that? That's a blame statement. Pride's in there. I just can't bring myself to apologize. There's weakness in there. I don't think I actually have what it takes to fix it. Justice. I fixed it last time. I apologized last time. It's somebody else's turn to do that. Show of hands. Anybody go, you know what? That's one of mine. I do that. And if you don't have your hand raised, it's because you think somebody else's fault that you feel those things. But here's the truth about blame. It always backfires. You see, whatever we blame, we put control of a new outcome over here. See that? So let me ask now, the question is, can I control circumstances? Not much. Can I control other people? Can I control evil? Can I control God? So when we put control over here, this is what Dr. Brené Brown says happens. She's the author of Daring Greatly. She said, blame is essentially unleashing our anger, pain, and discomfort on whatever we can find to make us feel more in control. When in reality, we're actually, the opposite happens. We are losing the ability to have happy, healthy, and empathetic relationships. Instead of gaining control, we lose control. And we need to realize that when we succeed at blaming, we're no closer to a solution. Blaming does absolutely nothing to solve the problem. And the excuses that we give are usually true. But excuses don't change anything either. They just make us feel a little better. We still have the problem. Blame backfires because we put the control over a new outcome in the hands of people or things over which we have little control. So what do we do instead? What is this alternate way? And I want to give us 4 commitments that if we actually do these things, it is going to set us up for a new outcome that's not in the control of something or someone else. And here's the first commitment. I will take responsibility. Take responsibility. For my life. All of my life. All of it. One of our best abilities is responsibility. I'm responsible for my life, my feelings, my strengths, my weaknesses, my flaws, my reactions, my responses, my attitudes, my dreams, my gifts, my choices, my time, my relationships, all of it. Marshall McLuhan said, there are no passengers on spaceship Earth. We are all crew. In the garden, when God came to Adam and Eve, what would have happened if they'd simply said, yes, we did it. We did what you told us not to do. We're sorry. Will you forgive us? We take responsibility for the decision that we made. What might have happened? I mean, we don't really know. But given the character that we know of God, their relationship with God would have been healed in that moment. And instead of hiding from God and embarrassing and being ashamed, they would have been able to face God, take responsibility for the decision, and deal with the consequences of their actions. And we don't know if it ever happened. My hunch is that it did at some point. You say, yeah, but God threw them out of the garden, told them they could never come back. Where's the grace in that? Well, the grace is in chapter 3, verse 22. God is speaking, and he said, he, meaning Adam, must not be allowed to reach out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever. You see, there's another tree in the garden called the tree of life, and it reappears in the book of Revelation. And what God is saying at that moment, he's saying, Adam and Eve have fallen. Adam and Eve have alienated themselves from me. And if they walk into the garden and now eat from the tree of life, they're going to continue to live forever in their fallen state. As an act of grace, God says, I'm going to protect you from a future that you know nothing about at this point. And even though it might seem really, really hard, it's grace. It's grace. And sometimes when God orchestrates something really hard in our lives and we go, that's not grace, we have to realize God can see way down the line. And this hard thing that's happening right now actually might be God's grace to us. When we take responsibility for our lives, we take back control of the only thing that I can control, me. And sometimes I don't like it, but that's reality. Woody Allen said, I hate reality, but it's still the best place to get a good steak. We live in our reality, let's just face it. Take responsibility for everything about me. A woman named Gretchen was complaining to her counselor one day about her friend Jean. Jean wasn't speaking to Gretchen because of something Gretchen had done. But Gretchen didn't think that what she'd done was worthy of getting the silent treatment from her friend Jean. Jean was bugged at Gretchen, and Gretchen was bugged at Jean's buggedness. And so her counselor asked her, when you are bugged, whose bugged is it? She finally admitted, well, mine, I guess, but I didn't cause it. The counselor said, when it rains and you're standing outside getting wet, who's responsible for being wet? God, who sends the rain, or you for standing in it? He was trying to get her to take responsibility for her own buggedness. Should Jean have done something to come to her? Of course, but that's Jean's problem. Gretchen's problem is that she needed to take responsibility for her whole life, including her response to Jean. And then make a move to do something about it. So take responsibility for your whole life. That's the first commitment. Here's the second commitment. I need to invite God into the center of my life. There's a lot of things we can do as human beings. A lot of really, really good things. We can read self-help books. We can attend seminars. We can pay a counselor and go to support groups. We can go to treatment centers. I can kind of pump myself up every morning, look myself in the mirror and go, you handsome devil, don't you ever die. I can do all of those human things, and they'll help some. They'll help some. But I've always wondered, why limit ourselves to merely human resources? Why not invite God into? Why not take advantage of all the spiritual resources out there that there are as well? And when I look at my list of those things in my hall of blame, my response is often, God help me. And I know some of you pretty well. And when I look at your list of things that are in the hall of blame, my response is, God help us all. Help us all. So here's what we do, Matthew 6:33. But seek first his kingdom. The first step we take is to invite God into the center of our lives. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart. Trust God from the bottom of your heart. Don't try to figure out everything on your own. Listen for God's voice in everything you do, everywhere you go. He's the one who will keep you. He's the one who will keep you on track. Let me just take a couple things out of our hall of blame. The pain factor. You see, often with pain, the choice isn't between pain or no pain. It's pain now or more pain later. That's the way it works. But God can use the the pain. He can. Romans 12, 10, 11. But God's discipline is always good for us. No discipline is enjoyable while it's happening. It's painful. But afterward, there will be a peaceful harvest of right living for those who are trained in this way. Let's take insecurity. Sometimes I have a hard time admitting my flaws. 1 Corinthians 12, there's a huge list of spiritual gifts that God says every Christ follower gets some spiritual gifts. The great news is everybody has some. You've got strengths. You've got abilities to be celebrated and developed and used. You don't have them all. You go, that's bad news. No, that's good news. It's good news because we don't have to do everything well. And we can celebrate rather than compete with someone else who does it so much better than me. That can happen when God's at the center of our lives. Let's take the weakness factor. I just don't think I can do it. I don't have what it takes. Well, if God is at the center of our lives, we have access, his power. We sang about having access to God's presence earlier in the service. 2 Corinthians 12:9, my grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. So Paul says, so now I am glad to boast about my weaknesses. Why? So that the power of Christ can work through me. Some of you have never really invited God into the very center of your life. You've got him at the periphery. God, I need your help once in a while. I do. God, I want your blessing on this deal, but I'm not sure I can trust you to run my life. You might really mess it up. C.S. Lewis wrote this about the Christian life. Imagine yourself as a living house. God comes in to rebuild that house, and first perhaps you can understand what he's doing. He's getting the drains right and stopping leaks in the roof and so on. You knew that these jobs needed doing, so you were not surprised. But presently, he starts knocking the house about in a way that hurts and does not seem to make any sense. What on earth is he up to? He's building quite a different house from the one you thought of. Throwing out new wing here, putting up an extra floor there, running up towers, making courtyards. You thought you were being made into a decent little cottage. But he is building a palace because he intends to come live in it himself. The best possible life is the life God has for me. That's the life. And when we invite God into the center of our lives, we have a great chance of living into that life. Here's number 3. I will normalize failure. One of the reasons we go down this side, the blame chain, is because we have an aversion to failing. I do. I don't like to fail. But somehow we just can't accept the fact that sometimes, most of the time, things will never go the way we plan. So we beat ourselves up when we fail, and we beat others up and blame others when they do. This is, I think, worth writing down. Failing is succeeding if we're going in the wrong direction. And also, failing, not doing something well the first few times we do it, is normal. Nothing worth doing is done well the first time. 2 Corinthians 3:18, our lives gradually, I love this word, gradually, become brighter and more beautiful as God enters our lives and we become like him. All growth is gradual. It involves failing, especially at the beginning. Picture this. You have a 1-year-old learning to walk. You got the video. Dad has the video, right? Here she comes. Mom's behind her. Go, honey. She takes 1 step, 2 steps, then what happens? Plop, right? What does mom do? Dad pans up. Mom goes, you're such a disappointment. You only took 2 steps. What's wrong with you? You're such a loser. Is that what happens? No. That video goes family viral. Why? She took 2 steps. She failed on her 3rd step. So what? She's learning to walk. I look around the room. We've done a good job at that. We had a lot of failing to make it there. We did. Maybe you've read this piece. It's called The Autobiography in 5 Short Chapters by Portia Nelson. Chapter 1, I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I'm lost. I'm hopeless. It isn't my fault. It takes forever to find a way out. Chapter 2, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place, but it isn't my fault. It still takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it there. I still fall in. It's a habit, but my eyes are open. I know where I am. It's my fault. I get out immediately. Chapter 4, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5, I walk down a different street. A failure is only a failure if we don't learn from it. A failure is a success if we learn from it. We need to normalize failure. And here's number 4. I'll stick with it, even through discomfort. We experience a lot of wonderful feelings as we follow Christ. Peace, love, joy, security, strength, comfort, delight, wonder, confidence, pleasure, intimacy. But there are a lot of uncomfortable feelings along the way. Conviction, regret, guilt, awkwardness, sadness, grief, discouragement, pain, confusion, weariness. Another C.S. Lewis quote, I didn't go to religion to make me happy. I always knew a bottle of port wine would do that. If you want a religion to make you feel really comfortable, I certainly don't recommend Christianity. Because when we take responsibility for our lives, when we invite Jesus into the very center of our lives, when we normalize failure, we will come to places in our lives where we go, that's not working so well. This is getting really uncomfortable. This feels like a huge risk, and we want to quit. We want to throw in the towel. We're going to be tempted to think that nothing ever changes. We need to remind ourselves of Galatians 6:9 at those moments where Paul writes, let's not become weary in doing good, in doing the right things. For at the proper time, we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. 2 weeks ago, 60 Minutes did a story. Maybe some of you saw it. It was called Life After Death Row. It was about a man who'd been released from an Alabama prison where he'd been there for 30 years on death row, wrongly convicted. Last summer, they released him because the Supreme Court threw out his case and freed him of all charges. He'd spent from age 29 to age 58 on death row in an Alabama prison. For 30 years, he'd sat in this 5x7 cement cell block, dim. They fed him through a slot in the door. He said his cell was 30 feet from the electric chair, 30 yards from the electric chair, like from me to that door. And while he was on death row, they executed 25 people in the time he was in there. He said the next morning after an execution, he could smell it. And Scott Pelley asked him, how do you feel when you walk out? How did you feel when you walked out of that prison? Oh, he said, thanking God. All along. He said, I can't really explain it to you, but from where I've been for 30 years, just to be able to come out and knowing that I wasn't going to have to be locked back up, it's an amazing feeling. And when he was released, there's no compensation, not one dime, not $1 for a set of new clothes, a bus ticket, a voucher, nothing, job, nothing, no apology. And while he was in there, he lost his chance at a great education, at getting married, certainly having a family, his own kids, grandkids, settle into a job, build a pension. His mother died while he was on death row, believing that her son would be executed. Scott Pelley asked him, are you angry? Without batting an eyelash, he said, no, Pelley asked him, how could you not be? They took 30 years of your life, most of your life. He said, they took 30 years of my life, as you said. What joy I have, I cannot afford to give it to them. Being angry at them would be letting them win. I'd still be in prison. I'm a person that loves to laugh. I love to see other people smile. And how can I smile when I'm full of hate? And so the 30 years that they got from me, he said, I count today, I count every day as a joy. Ray Hinton had every reason to blame. Blame the system, blame the prosecutor, blame his attorney, he could have done it, but he refused to do it. But instead, he thanks God the moment he gets out and lives into the joy that he can experience every single day. And if God can give Ray the power to do that, he can give us to change some areas in our lives that maybe we just need to give a little thought to. Because with God's help, a couple can quit blaming each other and learn to communicate. Parents with an out-of-control child can quit blaming the child's rebellious nature and learn how to discipline effectively. With the help of professional care and sometimes medication, depressed people can get better. A person in a dead-end job can quit blaming their lack of education, learn a new skill, and get a better job. A person trying to lose weight can learn to eat better, lose the weight, and keep it off. A person who gets a bad performance review can quit blaming the work environment and learn to do better. A person with a pattern of failed relationships can learn new relational skills. A person without faith can quit blaming God for a lack of supernatural proofs and learn to believe and trust in a real and living Jesus. It's time to quit blaming, isn't it? And move and do something. Let's pray. Jesus, thank you that 2,000 years ago, you took all of the blame in the world on yourself. You bore it. You suffered under it. You were alienated for it. And you extinguished it with your very life. And then you overcame it. You paid for it. You paid for all of my blame, everybody else's blame. You paid for that. And so, God, we want to grow into that new life, into that fresh life. So grow us up, mature us in this strong way. And with your help, with your Spirit's power, we can do this. In Jesus' name, amen.
Will you stand and worship with us for this last one?
All things have passed away. Your love has stayed the same. Your constant grace remains the cornerstone. Things that we thought were dead are breathing in life again. You caused your sun to shine on darkest nights. For all that you've done, we will pour out our love. This will be our anthem song. Jesus, we love you. Oh, how we love you. You are the one our hearts adore.
Well, I hope you come back next week. Our senior pastor, John Smith, will be back teaching about I Quit Living in Fear. And on your way out today, if you want to take your next step at Crossroads, go, what do I do next? Stop and see one of our Next Step volunteers right in the middle of the atrium. And the center section here, okay, center section, 2 on the floor, 2 in the bleachers. You have a party right now. Center section party out in the student center. Follow the arrows, and you're all invited out there. The rest of us, party this afternoon.